She was just walking home with two children she loved like her own, until flashing lights and racist assumptions turned a peaceful afternoon into a nightmare. But what the cops didn't know, this nanny wasn't just anybody. And when the truth came out, the entire police department would be forced to answer for their actions. It was a bright Saturday morning in the quiet, upscale suburb of Fairview Hills, the kind of neighborhood where manicured lawns and fresh sprinkled sidewalks painted a picture of American comfort. Sunlight bounced off windshields. Neighbors waved politely from their porches. Children's laughter echoed from backyard swings. Monica James adjusted the sun hat on little Sarah's head and tightened the Velcro on Liam's sneakers. At 38, Monica had spent over a decade as a professional nanny, and a remarkable one at that. Her degree in early childhood development, CPR certifications, and her patient, loving approach had earned her the trust of dozens of families. But her current position wasn't just a job, it was a promise. Sarah and Liam Cartwright, ages 5 and 7, had lost their mother to cancer 8 months ago. Their father, consumed by grief and business obligations, had turned to the one person his wife had trusted most with the children, Monica. To the kids, Monica wasn't a nanny. She was their second mom, their protector, their bedtime storyteller, and boo-boo healer. Monica made them breakfast with cartoon-shaped pancakes. She braided Sarah's curly blonde hair and made sure Liam never went to sleep without his favorite dinosaur book. If love could be measured in quiet sacrifices, Monica's cup ran over every day. That morning, they packed a picnic basket and headed to the local park. Monica laid out a blanket, unpacked juice boxes, apple slices, and turkey sandwiches with no crust, just how Sarah liked them. Other families were scattered nearby, and the playground buzzed with the shrieks and giggles of dozens of children. Monica sat on a bench, watching them climb and slide, laughing freely in the open sun. She smiled to herself, sipping iced tea and flipping through her worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. The irony wasn't lost on her. About 20 minutes in, she noticed something strange. A woman, mid-40s, sharp jaw, pearl earrings, was standing near the bushes, arms crossed, eyes locked on Monica and the children. She leaned toward another parent and whispered something. The other parent glanced up with furrowed brows. Monica's smile faltered. It wasn't the first time. Over the years, she'd grown used to stares, confused, sometimes suspicious, when people saw a black woman caring for white children. But this stare was different, sharper, judgmental, dangerous. Still, Monica chose grace. She smiled politely at the woman, nodded slightly, and turned her eyes back to the playground. But the whispers continued, and then the woman pulled out her phone. Monica's stomach turned. 5 minutes later, she heard sirens. She looked up to see a police cruiser speed into the parking lot. 2 officers stepped out. One tall, white, late 30s, the other younger, Latino. Their eyes swept the playground, then locked on her. Monica stood slowly, calling out to Sarah and Liam, "Kids, come here, please." They ran over, breathless and giggling, holding up leaves and pebbles like treasures. But the laughter stopped when they saw the uniforms. "Is everything okay, officers?" Monica asked, holding the children's hands gently. "We got a call about a possible kidnapping," the tall officer said flatly. Monica blinked. "I beg your pardon?" A woman reported seeing a black female adult with 2 white children, appearing agitated and suspicious. "We need to ask some questions." Monica's voice stayed calm. "I'm their nanny. Their mother passed away last year. I've been with the family for 4 years. Do you have documentation proving that?" Monica sighed inwardly. "No, I don't carry employment contracts to the park. But if you call their father—" "Ma'am, please don't reach for anything." "I wasn't," she said, holding her hands visible. Sarah squeezed her hand tightly. She's not bad. Liam shouted. She's our Monica. But the officer wasn't listening. The other cop muttered something into his radio, stepping closer. Ma'am, you'll need to come with us. I'm not going anywhere without these kids, Monica replied. Ma'am. Officer, she said, her voice firm now. I know my rights, and I know this is racial profiling. The taller cop stepped forward. We're not debating this. Before she could speak again, they grabbed her arms. Sarah screamed. Liam began to cry. Stop it. You're hurting her. Sarah shouted. Other parents had started filming. Monica's hat fell to the ground. Her book, crushed under an officer's boot. Through the noise, one parent asked aloud, Is this necessary? Monica was handcuffed right there in front of the children. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't struggling. But her eyes held pain, the pain of humiliation, the pain of injustice, the pain of being seen as a threat when all she'd done was care. One of the cops tried to lead the kids away. They stay with me. Monica cried. You can't separate us. We'll have CPS come down and assess the situation, the officer said. She's not kidnapping us. Liam yelled through tears. The woman who made the call stood at a distance, arms folded in smug satisfaction. Until another mom, phone in hand, approached her. You just traumatized two kids because you didn't like what their nanny looked like, the woman said. Hope you're proud. The caller looked away. Back in the squad car, Monica sat quietly, her eyes burning, her jaw clenched. She'd dealt with prejudice before, subtle, systemic, institutional, but never like this, never in handcuffs, never in front of the children she loved like her own. She was taken to the station for investigation. The kids were left sobbing in the arms of a confused CPS worker, and all Monica could think was, how do you protect children from a world like this? The air in the police station was cold, sterile, and heavy with an unspoken tension. Monica sat in the small, gray-walled interview room with her wrists still sore from the handcuffs. Her skin tingled from the humiliation, not the steel. She stared at the two-way mirror, knowing full well someone was probably watching her from the other side. She'd seen this scene play out in 1,000 shows, but it was different when you were the one in the chair. No one had offered her water. No one had let her call the children's father. All she'd gotten so far was a vague, we're figuring things out. She sat with her back straight and her hands folded calmly in her lap, not because she wasn't scared, but because she refused to give them the image they expected. Down the hallway, Officer Luis Torres paced nervously. He'd been the second officer on the scene at the park and hadn't said much during the arrest. But as a Latino officer in a mostly white precinct, Luis had seen enough racially charged incidents to recognize this one wasn't clean. He approached his partner, Officer Blake, who was typing up a report at the front desk. Blake, Luis said quietly but firmly, You sure we did the right thing out there? Blake scoffed. We followed up on a 911 call. Black woman with white kids. It looked suspicious. Suspicious? Luis asked. She was feeding them apple slices on a blanket. They called her Monica. The boy literally cried when we cuffed her. Blake shrugged. Maybe it's Stockholm Syndrome. Luis frowned. She didn't resist. She was calm. She asked us to call the father. Policy says we bring her in for questioning until we confirm ID. That's all we did. That's not all we did, Luis muttered. He turned and walked toward the supervisor's office. Captain Joan Wexler was reviewing paperwork when he entered. Captain, Luis said, We need to call the father of the children involved in this morning's arrest. Now, she looked up over her glasses. What's going on, Torres? She's telling the truth. I believe her. And those kids were terrified. Wexler tapped her pen on the desk. You have his contact. She gave his name. Thomas Cartwright. Pretty sure he's the CEO of some tech firm. Big name. Wexler's eyes narrowed. Cartwright? You mean the Cartwright? That guy's got half the city's council in his pocket. Luis nodded. Exactly. And we just arrested his children's nanny. For no reason. Captain Wexler immediately picked up the phone. Meanwhile, across town, Thomas Cartwright was on a business call when his assistant burst into the office, pale as a ghost. Sir, you need to come with me. It's about your kids. He was at the station in under 15 minutes. Thomas Cartwright was a man who turned heads wherever he went, tall, sharp suit, and a presence that filled the room before he spoke a word. When he stormed through the precinct doors, the temperature dropped 5 degrees. I'm looking for Monica James, he said, his voice cold and commanding. And I want my children. Now, every head turned. Luis Torres stepped forward immediately. Mr. Cartwright, I'm Officer Torres. Please come with me. I'll explain everything. Thomas followed him down the hallway like a storm cloud. When they reached the interview room, Torres opened the door. Monica looked up, and her face softened for the first time since she'd been arrested. Thomas, she said quietly. He stepped in, looked her over, and then turned to Torres. She was arrested? He asked. Yes, sir, Torres replied. There was a report. Where are my children? They were picked up by CPS for temporary holding. Standard in these cases. These cases? Thomas interrupted, his voice now seething. You mean the case where my children's caregiver, a woman who's practically family, was arrested because of the color of her skin? Luis held up a hand, his voice calm. Sir, I didn't agree with how it was handled. I've already spoken to the captain. We're getting the kids back right now. Thomas walked over to Monica and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. I am so sorry, Monica, he said. They had no right. I'm going to make sure this never happens again. A moment later, Captain Wexler appeared at the door. Mr. Cartwright, she began. I want to apologize personally. This was a mistake. We're releasing Ms. James immediately, and CPS is bringing the children here now. Monica stood slowly, brushing off her pants, holding her head high. You didn't even let me call him, she said, looking directly at the captain. Wexler looked down. Yes, ma'am. That was wrong. Monica turned to Luis. Thank you for speaking up. He gave her a respectful nod. You didn't deserve this. Within the hour, Sarah and Liam came running into the lobby, both in tears. They ran straight into Monica's arms, holding her so tightly it was as if they feared she'd vanish. I thought they were taking you away forever. Sarah sobbed. They were so mean, Liam whispered. Monica knelt, hugging them both. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Thomas watched, jaw clenched, hands and fists. Then he turned to Wexler. This will be public, he said. I want that woman who made the call held responsible. I want every officer who touched her held accountable. This doesn't get swept under the rug. Yes, sir, Wexler replied quietly. He walked back over to Monica and the kids. We're going home, he said, and then we're calling my lawyers. As they walked out together, other officers turned away, some in guilt, some in shame. Monica didn't look back. Outside, the sun had shifted. The light was still golden, but it no longer felt warm. As the black SUV pulled away, Luis stood at the glass doors of the station, staring after them. He knew something had to change, and it had to start here. The fluorescent lights above Monica flickered slightly, humming with a low, steady buzz that echoed through the dull, cold walls of the precinct. She sat on a metal bench in the processing room, her wrists still red from the too tight handcuffs they'd finally removed only after she was led inside. The room smelled like stale coffee and harsh disinfectant, but what hung heavier in the air was judgment. Cops walked past her, barely hiding their suspicious glances, the kind that said more than words ever could. Monica could hear their murmurs. She knew they hadn't even tried to understand the truth. They'd made up their minds the second they saw her skin and the color of the children she was with. Monica sat still, posture straight, pride intact despite the indignity of it all. Her eyes stared at the clock. Tick, tick, tick. She had said only one thing since arriving. I want my attorney. And now she waited, behind the glass of the adjacent observation room. Officer Kinney scrolled through her file on the computer. He frowned, clearly puzzled. His partner, Officer Ramirez, leaned over. You get anything? Yeah, but it doesn't make sense, Kinney muttered, reading line by line. She has no criminal history. Born in Atlanta, master's degree in childhood psychology, multiple certifications, CPR, background checks, all spotless. Ramirez blinked. So she's actually a nanny? Kinney shook his head. More than that. Look here. He pointed to a scanned legal document. This was uploaded in a state registry. Monica James is the legal guardian of both children, appointed by their biological mother, Karen Whitaker, who passed away 3 months ago. Ramirez took a step back. Wait, what? The room suddenly felt smaller. Kinney clicked to enlarge the file. Attached were notarized guardianship papers, medical release forms, a will, and even letters from the mother, explaining her decision. She'd been terminally ill. Cancer. And Monica, her best friend of nearly 2 decades, had been entrusted with the children's care before she passed. There was no crime. There was no abduction. Monica was exactly where she was supposed to be. In the holding room, Monica didn't flinch when the door opened. She only raised her eyes. It wasn't an apology. Not yet. It was the shift in their eyes, from aggression to confusion, that said everything. Miss James, Kinney said stiffly, we're reviewing some documents related to your relationship with the Whitaker children. Is my attorney here yet? She interrupted, cool and composed. Just then, the door opened again, and in stormed a sharp-dressed woman in a navy pantsuit and heels that echoed like a judge's gavel across the floor. I'm Olivia Brandt, Ms. James's legal representative, and the family attorney for the Whitakers. Who in this room is responsible for detaining my client? The officers looked at each other. Neither spoke. Let me guess, Olivia continued, her tone slicing through the air like a blade. Someone saw a black woman with 2 white children and decided to call it a crime. And instead of asking questions, you arrested her, traumatized those children, and violated her civil rights. Ma'am, Kinney began, flustered. We received a report, and... A report. Olivia scoffed. Do you know what else is in that report? That the children's mother, Karen Whitaker, died from pancreatic cancer, and that in her final months, she didn't ask for her estranged siblings or wealthy cousins. She asked for Monica, because Monica was there for her when no one else was. Olivia pulled out a leather folder and slapped it down on the desk. In here is everything: the will, the court approval, the full guardianship file. Monica James isn't just their nanny. She's their mother in every way that counts. Kinney's throat went dry. Ramirez looked down, ashamed. Monica finally stood up. She walked over to Olivia and gently squeezed her hand. Thank you, she whispered. Outside the precinct, CPS had already arrived, alerted by protocol when the children were left unattended. But the moment the caseworker saw the legal documents and Monica's name on the guardianship file, her face softened. I'm so sorry, Miss James. This never should have happened. Inside, Officer Ramirez stepped forward. We made a mistake. Monica turned slowly, her expression unreadable. No, she said. You made a decision. A snap judgment. And my babies were screaming while you dragged me away. What happens to them now? Do they forget? Do they ever feel safe again? Neither officer had an answer, but Olivia did. We'll be filing a civil rights complaint. Expect paperwork. Later that evening, Monica finally returned to her home, a quiet two-story house with a toy-strewn lawn and a porch light left on. When she stepped through the door, two tiny bodies launched toward her, James and Sophie, still in pajamas, eyes red from crying but full of relief. Monica, they cried together, burying themselves in her arms. She held them tight, kissing the tops of their heads, whispering, "I'm here. I'm here. I'll always be here." Tears streamed down her face, but she smiled. She was home. And now, the world would know who she really was. The moment Monica James stepped out of the police precinct with a stinging knot of betrayal still tightening in her chest, she had no idea how fast the world was about to change. It started with a teenager's TikTok, shaky hands filming from across the park. The video showed a black woman being arrested in front of two white children screaming for her. "Monica, don't take her," one of them sobbed as officers pushed her into the cruiser. The camera shook. The teenager whispered, "She wasn't doing anything. I saw her with them earlier. They were happy. She's their nanny. Why are they doing this to her?" By morning, it had over 12 million views. By noon, Monica's name was trending in 3 countries. And by the end of the day, the hashtag Monica is their family had ignited a firestorm that neither the police department nor the suburban community of Oak Ridge had seen coming. Local news channels scrambled to cover the story first. Some were cautious, nanny detained in custody dispute. Others weren't. Black woman arrested for caring while black headlined one viral think piece. The face of everyday racism in America. CNN picked it up next, then MSNBC. Activists who had been quiet in recent weeks found a new cause. The footage was devastating. Not just the arrest, but the footage of the children screaming in the station lobby. "Where is Monica? We want to go home with Monica. She's our family." A lawyer, red-faced with rage, slamming documents on a counter. She's not their babysitter. She's their legal guardian, appointed by the mother before she passed away. The camera froze on Monica's tear-streaked face as she was led away in cuffs. Silent, dignified, betrayed. That image would become a symbol. Protests erupted outside the Oak Ridge Police Department within 48 hours. Signs waved high. Being black is not suspicious. Love knows no color. Monica is a hero. One sign in a child's handwriting simply read, "Bring Monica home." News vans clogged the station's parking lot. Civil rights attorneys demanded accountability. The mayor's office issued a short, vague statement, reaffirming a commitment to equality. But it wasn't enough. Not when the whole country had watched it happen. Inside Monica's home, she sat silently on her living room couch, flanked by the children she had raised since they were toddlers. Ellie, the oldest, refused to leave her side. Tyler, younger, kept asking, "Are they going to take you away again?" Monica hugged them tighter than she ever had before. Across from her sat Rachel Farnsworth, the family attorney and the mother's closest friend before she died. "I've known that woman who called the police. She walks her dog in the same park. Her name is Janet Cleary. PTA board, church group, all that," Rachel muttered bitterly. "But she saw you and assumed the worst." Monica didn't answer. Her silence was louder than words. Rachel continued, "We're filing suit, Monica, false arrest, violation of civil rights, emotional trauma, you name it." Monica looked up. "I don't care about a lawsuit. I care that these children had to see me in handcuffs because someone couldn't imagine that love could look like this." The next day, Monica was on Good Morning America. Her voice was calm, collected. Her strength radiated through the screen. "I didn't take those children," she said firmly. "Their mother gave them to me. She trusted me with their lives. and I've loved them like my own. That's all they've ever known." The host blinked back tears. The segment ended with Monica embracing Ellie and Tyler live on air. The nation fell in love with them. Meanwhile, at the Oak Ridge Police Department, things were unraveling fast. The officers involved were placed on temporary administrative leave. Internal Affairs launched a full-scale investigation. Leaked emails showed one of the officers had made previous racially charged remarks during a traffic stop incident months earlier. No action had been taken then. That detail only inflamed the outrage. The chief of police gave a press conference, nervously sweating under the camera lights. "We regret the events that occurred. We are reviewing our policies and procedures." But it wasn't enough. Not when the nation had witnessed every second of the injustice. Monica's supporters created a foundation overnight, the Monica James Guardian Project, an initiative to protect Black caregivers and ensure law enforcement undergoes racial bias training. Donations flooded in. Within 3 weeks, they raised over $1.8 million. Celebrities tweeted their support. Viola Davis. "Monica is what grace looks like under pressure." Trevor Noah. "Only in America can a woman be arrested for loving kids who don't look like her." Michelle Obama. "Let's build a world where Monica's story is never repeated." But there were still critics. Janet Cleary, the woman who made the 911 call, appeared in a local news interview trying to justify her actions. "I didn't mean harm. I thought the kids were in danger. It didn't seem right, a woman like that with children like those." The backlash was swift. Brands dropped her charity board. Her own church community denounced her actions. People protested outside her gated home. It was clear America wasn't buying her excuse. Monica, however, refused to become bitter. In another interview, she said, "I don't hate that woman. I pity her, because her heart is too small to see family beyond the boundaries of skin. But these children, they know better. And maybe that's how we start to heal, by raising children who won't repeat these mistakes." By the end of the month, Monica had become more than a victim. She was a voice, a movement, a mother, a warrior. She spoke at rallies. She sat on panels about policing and implicit bias. She testified before state legislature. Through it all, Ellie and Tyler were right beside her, unashamed, proud. They didn't see a nanny. They saw Monica, the woman who packed their lunches, helped with math homework, wiped tears, and stood tall even when the world tried to knock her down. In the final moments of a documentary aired on Netflix, Guardianship, Monica stood in front of a packed auditorium. She spoke softly. "I wasn't just protecting these children. They were protecting me too. And now we're protecting each other. That's family. That's what love does." And the crowd rose to their feet. The morning after Monica's release was quiet, too quiet. She stood in the doorway of her home, a warm cup of tea in her hand, watching the 2 children she had helped raise play quietly in the living room. Their laughter had returned, but something in their eyes had changed. The innocence of childhood had been bruised by flashing red and blue lights, harsh hands, and questions that no child should ever hear. Monica lowered herself into the worn-out armchair beside them, her fingers brushing a crayon drawing left on the coffee table. It showed her holding hands with Lily and Ethan under a bright sun. "Our family" was written across the top. Her heart swelled with love and rage. What had happened wasn't just an attack on her dignity. It was a theft of peace, an attempt to redefine who belonged and who didn't. She wasn't going to let it go. By noon, her lawyer, Sarah Levine, had filed a civil lawsuit against the city's police department and the individual officers involved. Charges included racial profiling, unlawful detainment, emotional trauma, and child endangerment. News spread quickly. The video captured by a passerby Monica being handcuffed while the children screamed for her, had already gone viral. Millions had seen it. The raw footage, paired with the cold arrogance of Officer Whitaker's voice, had ignited a firestorm across social media. By evening, the front of Monica's home was filled with reporters. Protesters gathered on the sidewalk holding signs that read, "Black caregivers matter," "End racial bias," and "Protect our children." But the most powerful image was Ethan and Lily themselves, standing on the porch with Monica clinging to her sides as she addressed the world. "I have raised these children since they were in diapers," she said into the microphones. "Their mother trusted me with their lives. That trust wasn't given because of the color of my skin. It was earned through love, compassion, and commitment. And I will not be silenced or criminalized because some people can't see past their own prejudice." Cheers erupted from the crowd. Monica didn't blink. She was just getting started. The police department, under enormous pressure, announced a full internal review. Officer Whitaker and Officer Drew were placed on administrative leave pending investigation. But that wasn't enough for Monica or the community that had rallied behind her. 2 weeks later, the courtroom was packed. Journalists lined the back wall, and local activists sat with arms folded in the gallery. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman with decades on the bench, presided with firm resolve. The city's attorneys tried to argue that the officers had acted on a legitimate tip from a concerned citizen, but the evidence was damning. The 911 call recording was played aloud, revealing that the caller had simply said, "There's a black woman with 2 white kids at the park. I think it's suspicious." No child was reported missing. No criminal description matched Monica. And yet officers had stormed in, guns drawn, hands ready to force submission. The body cam footage didn't help them either. It showed Monica calmly explaining her relationship to the children, offering to show ID, and requesting a lawyer. It also showed Officer Whitaker laughing as he dismissed her. "Yeah, right. Lawyer Nanny. You people always got a story." The gasps in the courtroom said it all. Sarah Levine didn't hold back. Her closing statement was fierce. "This isn't just about Monica. This is about every Black caregiver who has ever been questioned while doing their job. Every father wrongly assumed to be a kidnapper. Every mother accused of theft for holding her child's hand in a grocery store. This is about systemic failure. And if we don't hold it accountable here, when will we?" The jury took less than 3 hours to deliberate. Monica won. The city was ordered to pay damages for emotional distress, reputational harm, and civil rights violations. But it wasn't about the money. Monica didn't smile when the verdict was read. She simply looked over at Ethan and Lily in the front row, both holding tightly onto the hands of her attorney. Their eyes met, and she gave them the softest nod. Outside the courthouse, hundreds had gathered. When she stepped into the sunlight, the crowd erupted into applause. Some cheered. Others cried. One reporter asked, "What's next for you, Monica?" She looked directly into the cameras. "I'm starting a foundation," she said, "in the name of Sarah Williams, the children's late mother, my best friend. The Sarah Foundation will support nannies and caregivers of color, will provide legal aid, training, and advocacy, because no one should go through what I did. No child should be traumatized for loving the person who raises them." The story didn't end there. In the weeks that followed, more women, Black and brown caregivers, came forward with similar experiences. Some were accused of theft, others of abduction, all based on skin color. Monica's foundation quickly gained support from celebrities, politicians, and parent organizations across the country. She was invited to speak on national television, where she calmly dismantled stereotypes and exposed the subtle and not-so-subtle racism embedded in caregiving professions. Meanwhile, Officer Whitaker faced disciplinary hearings. Under mounting public pressure, he resigned from the force. He issued a half-hearted apology online, which was swiftly met with widespread backlash for lacking accountability. Monica never responded. She didn't need to. Instead, she poured her energy into the children and her advocacy work. She took Ethan and Lily on trips, helped them heal through counseling, and taught them to be proud of their unique family. She made sure they knew they were safe. But more than anything, she made sure they knew that love isn't about appearances. It's about presence, trust, and the strength to protect what's right, even when the world tries to make it wrong. Months later, she stood on the steps of the Capitol, delivering a speech during National Caregivers Week. "I'm not just a nanny. I'm a protector, a teacher, a mother in every way but name. And I won't let racism rewrite that truth. I hope my story reminds us all that love sees beyond color, and justice must, too." As she spoke, a new mural was being painted back in her neighborhood. A tall, striking image of Monica holding the hands of Ethan and Lily. Underneath it, in bold, proud letters, were the words, "Family is not defined by blood. It's defined by love." And that love, stronger than any badge or bias, had finally won.